They say a woman's heart runs like a river cutting through mountain stone, wild, untamed, and answering to no man. No force on earth can make it turn from its chosen path. And out on the lands ruled by Chief Nantan, there lived a young Apache woman whose heart was fiercer than any river and more restless than a desert storm. Her name was Ayana. For 5 long years, the bravest dust riders from every nearby tribe had ridden into her village. They came bearing gifts, buffalo hides thick as winter, wild horses broken by their own hands, bows carved from sacred wood. They spoke of battles they had survived, enemies they had buried, and feats that would shake the pride of any man. And Ayana, calm as the sun dipping behind the western hills, turned every single one away. No explanations, no apologies, just a quiet, unshakable no. One man had crossed 3 rivers and 2 mountain passes to reach her. No, another had captured 20 wild mustangs just to prove his worth. No, a third was said to be the finest-looking warrior across 7 tribes. Still no. Chief Nantan watched it all with a tightening jaw. His daughter had reached 23 winters, and in their world, a woman standing alone that long stirred whispers, uneasy ones. One night, after yet another suitor rode off in silence, pride broken and shoulders heavy, Nantan called Ayana into his lodge. His voice was low, steady, but edged with concern. "What is it you're waiting for? The strongest men have come, the bravest, the finest hunters. What more could life offer you?" Ayana met his gaze, her dark eyes deep as a nightfall, holding secrets even the wind couldn't carry. "Father," she said softly, "when the right man comes, my heart will speak. Until then, it stays quiet. And if it never speaks, then I'll live my days listening to the wind, and that will be enough." Nantan exhaled slowly. He had known this about her since she was a child chasing butterflies through open fields. She saw the world in ways others couldn't. She always had. Time passed. The 100th suitor came and left, just like the rest. The Dustfall folk began to murmur. Some called her strange. Others said she was too proud. The older women shook their heads as she walked by, but Ayana carried herself tall and steady, as if their whispers were nothing more than wind brushing through dry leaves. Then, one autumn afternoon, when the land burned gold and red beneath the fading sun, something shifted. Ayana was down by the river gathering herbs when she heard it. A horse, but not right. Its stride was uneven, frantic. She slipped behind a cluster of rocks and watched. A man emerged from the trees. He was a stranger, a white man, dressed like the cowboys who sometimes passed through the western trails. His horse staggered beneath him, barely standing, and the man himself was covered in dust and blood. He slid from the saddle and hit the ground hard, like a tree struck by lightning. Ayana should have run for the Red Sky Riders, should have called for help. That would have been the right thing, the safe thing. But something held her still. Her heart pounded so loud it echoed in her ears as she stepped closer. The man lay barely breathing, a deep wound torn into his side, his face bruised and battered. Someone had done this to him with ruthless intent. Then, as if sensing her presence, his eyes flickered open. Blue, clear as the sky after a summer storm. But it wasn't the color that froze her. It was what lived behind it. Pain. Endless, bottomless pain. Loneliness. The same loneliness that crept into her chest when she stared at the stars at night. And something else. Something she couldn't name, yet somehow recognized, like it had always been part of her. He tried to speak, but only a broken whisper slipped out before darkness took him again. Ayana stood there for a long moment, unmoving. Then she turned and ran. Not to call the warriors, but to find Selah. That night, As they carried the wounded stranger back into the village, Nantan watched his daughter closely. There was something different in her, something alive behind her eyes he had never seen before. "Why are you helping him?" he asked. Ayana looked at the unconscious man, then back at her father. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know I have to." And in that moment, though no one yet understood it, the path of two worlds began to wind together, like roots growing side by side beneath the same earth. After 23 years of silence, Ayana's heart had finally begun to speak. For 3 long days, the stranger hovered between life and death, drifting in that shadowed place where spirits decide whether a soul stays or slips away. Selah, the tribe's elder healer, worked without rest. She washed his wounds with river water and sacred herbs, her weathered hands steady as stone. She mixed poultices from plants only she understood, ground roots into paste, and whispered old songs passed down through generations. And Ayana never left his side. "You should rest," Nantan told her on the second day. "I can't," she answered, her eyes fixed on the stranger's pale face. "Why does he matter so much to you?" Nantan pressed. "He's no one to us? A drifter, a white man." Ayana didn't answer. The truth was, she didn't understand it herself. All she knew was that every time she looked at him, something deep inside her shifted, like dry land finally touched by rain, like a river carving a new path after years of silence. On the third day, just as the sun sank behind the jagged hills, the stranger's eyes opened. He didn't shout, didn't panic at the unfamiliar faces surrounding him. He simply looked around, those blue eyes heavy with an endless kind of sorrow. Then his gaze settled on Ayana. "Where am I?" he rasped, his voice barely more than breath. "You're safe," she replied in English. Her father had made sure she learned the white man's tongue when she was young, saying one day it might matter. "You're in Nantan's village," she continued. "I found you by the river." The man closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something had changed. Gratitude flickered there, tangled with a grief too heavy for one man to carry. "My name is Cole Maddox," he said quietly, and after that he fell silent. Days turned into weeks. Under Selah's care, Cole's wounds slowly closed. He could stand, walk, even eat, but words no longer came easily to him, as if they had dried up somewhere deep inside. The Red Sky Riders watched him closely. A white man living among them stirred unease. Questions lingered in every glance. Who was he? What had happened to him? Would he bring trouble with him? Should he be driven out? "He doesn't belong here," Takai said one night, his voice firm. As the most respected warrior, his words carried weight. But Nantan raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "A wounded man came to our land. We healed him," the chief said. "That is our way. When he's strong again, then we decide." Ayana watched from a distance. She saw how Cole sat alone by the fire each night, staring into the flames like they held answers he couldn't find. She saw how he avoided every gaze, like a wounded animal waiting for the next blow. One night, she finally walked over and sat beside him. She said nothing, just shared the warmth of the fire. Minutes passed before he spoke. "I had a family," he said suddenly, not looking at her. "A wife, a little boy. We had a place near the river. Good land." Ayana stayed quiet, listening. "They came one night," he continued, his voice tightening. "Men on horseback. They wanted everything, our land, our animals. My wife, my boy." His voice cracked. "I couldn't stop them. They left me for dead." The fire crackled in the silence. "I woke up alone," he whispered. "Everything I loved. Gone." Ayana felt her chest tighten. like something inside her was breaking with him. Now she understood the weight behind those blue eyes, the depth of that sorrow she had seen from the very beginning. "The pain you carry," she said softly, "it's too much for one man to hold." For the first time, Cole looked at her directly. "Why did you help me?" he asked. "Your people have every reason to hate men like me." "I don't see an enemy when I look at you," she answered gently. "I see a man who lost everything, and still kept breathing. That takes more strength than most warriors will ever know." Something shifted in his eyes then. The sorrow remained, but beneath it something flickered. Faint, fragile, something that might have been hope. "In my village," Ayanna went on quietly, "they say I'm strange, that I turned away 100 dust riders, strong men, brave men, and none of them made me feel anything." She let out a soft breath, almost a smile. "But now, for the first time, my heart isn't silent anymore." She looked back into the fire. Cole didn't answer, but she noticed it. His shoulders, always drawn tight like a bowstring ready to snap, loosened just a little. And that night, beneath a sky full of quiet stars, two broken souls recognized each other. Not through grand words or promises, but through the simple truth of not feeling alone anymore. Just the quiet truth of two souls who had known the deepest kind of loneliness. And, for a brief moment, no longer felt alone. Above them, the stars stretched wide across the prairie sky, silent witnesses to a story only beginning to take shape. Weeks slipped into a month. 1 month turned into 2. And Cole Maddox, the stranger who had arrived half dead, was still there. No one could say exactly when it happened. One day, he simply began helping with the horses. The animals, usually restless around outsiders, grew calm beneath his touch. He had a gift, an unspoken way with them that didn't need words. Mato, the old horsekeeper, was the first to speak in his favor. "This man understands them," he told Nantan. "He works hard, keeps to himself. Let him stay." And just like that, without ceremony or declaration, Cole found a place among them. The little ones came next. At first, they watched him from a distance, whispering and staring at his pale skin and blue eyes. But one day, the smallest among them gathered the courage to step closer. "Is it true," the child asked, "that men like you come from where the sun rises?" Cole smiled. It was the first time since his arrival. A faint, almost forgotten thing, but real. "I come from far away," he said, "a place with wooden homes and fields of golden wheat." The children sat around him, wide-eyed and eager, and Cole, who had carried silence like a second skin, began to sing. Soft songs from his homeland, melodies of rivers, distant hills, and endless skies. From afar, Ayanna watched, and something warm began to grow inside her chest, something unfamiliar, something steady. But not everyone welcomed the change. Takai watched Cole with cold, measuring eyes. He was the strongest warrior among the Red Sky Riders, second only to Nantan in respect. For years, he had waited, patient, unwavering, for Ayanna to choose him. And now this outsider, this broken stranger, stood where he had hoped to stand. "I don't understand why we let him stay," Takai said one night to the others. "He's not one of us. He doesn't know our ways. He doesn't honor our traditions." "He works hard," one warrior replied. "The horses trust him," said another. "The horses don't decide who belongs here," Takai snapped, frustration sharpening his voice. And while tension simmered in the open, something else was quietly taking root in the shadows. Every evening, as the sun sank low and painted the land in gold, Ayanna walked down to the river. And every evening, as if drawn by the same unseen force, Cole appeared along that same path. At first, they walked side by side in silence. Words felt unnecessary. There was something in simply being near each other, something that filled the empty spaces both carried deep inside. But slowly, the silence began to break. Cole spoke of the life he had lost, of early mornings working the land, of nights spent by the fire with Mary Maddox and little Eli Maddox. He spoke of dreams that had turned to ash, and the nightmares that still followed him into sleep. Ayanna shared her own quiet truths, how she had always felt out of place, as if the world never quite fit her. How she had turned away 100 dust riders, strong, honorable men, because none had ever stirred her heart. And now? Cole asked one evening, as the river shimmered like molten gold beneath the fading light. Ayanna met his eyes, steady and unafraid. Now my heart beats so loud, it scares me sometimes. Cole hesitated, then reached out and took her hand. A simple gesture. Careful, almost uncertain. But to both of them, it meant everything. That same night, Takai made his choice. He walked into Nantan's lodge dressed in his finest, leading 10 magnificent horses, the strongest and most prized of his herd. "Great chief," Takai said, his voice steady and formal, carrying across the gathering. "I have waited many years. I have been patient. I have shown respect. Today I come to ask honorably for your daughter's hand." The entire Dustfall folk seemed to hold their breath. Everyone knew what this meant. This was Takai's final chance, and deep down, they all knew how it would end. Nantan turned his gaze toward Ayanna, who stood quietly at the entrance of the lodge, her figure still as stone. "What do you say, my daughter?" Ayanna stepped forward. She looked at Takai, a man strong, respected, worthy, a man any woman in the tribe would have accepted with pride. "Takai," she said, her voice calm but unshaken, "you are a great warrior. You would be a strong husband, and a good father." A pause. "But not for me." A ripple of whispers swept through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Takai's jaw tightened. "Is there someone else?" he asked, though the answer already burned inside him. Ayanna didn't speak. She simply turned her head toward where Cole Maddox stood, silent, watching. That was enough. Rage flared in Takai's eyes, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned pale. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath, before turning sharply and disappearing into the night. One by one, the stars appeared overhead. And in the heart of the village, 2 worlds stood on the edge of collision. The storm was coming. The days that followed stretched tight as a drawn bowstring. Everyone could feel it, something inevitable hanging in the air, like the scent of rain before a storm breaks. Takai spoke to no one. He rose before dawn, trained alone deep in the woods, and returned long after the sun had fallen. The fire in his eyes had changed. What once held pride now burned with something darker, something dangerous. The stone elders whispered among themselves. Women pulled their children closer when he passed. Even the red sky riders kept their distance. "We need to act," Sela said quietly to Nantan. "A wounded heart can poison an entire village." But Nantan shook his head. "This is a matter of honor," he said. "It must be settled the old way." Cole felt it too. The weight in the air, the stares, the silent promise of trouble in Takai's eyes. But fear didn't take hold of him. After everything he had already lost, what else could the world take? One morning, as Cole worked among the horses, Takai stepped into his path. "Outsider," he said, his voice cold as mountain frost. Cole straightened slowly, saying nothing. "You came into our land," Takai continued. "We fed you, sheltered you, protected you, and this is how you repay us? By taking what isn't yours." "I've taken nothing," Cole answered, calm and steady. "Her heart was never yours to claim," he added quietly. Takai's voice rose, sharp enough to cut through the entire village. I waited for her. Years! I was patient. I honored her. And you— He stepped closer, fury rising. You show up broken and bleeding, and she looks at you like you were sent by the spirits themselves. Cole let out a slow breath. He understood that pain, understood what it meant to love, and watch it slip through your fingers like water. A heart isn't something you steal, he said. It chooses, and neither you nor I get to command it. Takai stepped forward, fists tight. Then fight for her, he demanded. Prove you're worthy. I won't fight you. Afraid? No. Cole met his gaze, unflinching. I've lost too much already, he said quietly. There's nothing to gain from beating a man who's already hurting. For a moment, Takai faltered. That wasn't what he expected. Not resistance, not defiance, certainly not compassion. You're a coward, he spat, before turning and disappearing between the lodges. That night, Ayana went to her father. Nantan sat by the fire, its glow dancing across his face. He looked older than she remembered, tired in a way that ran deeper than the body. Father, she said softly, sitting beside him. My daughter. They sat in silence for a long while, just as they had done many times before. I know why you're here, Nantan said at last. Ayana reached out and took his hand. For 23 years, I waited, she said. 100 dust riders came and went, strong men, brave men, honorable men. She lowered her gaze slightly. But when I looked at them, I felt nothing. And when you look at the outsider? Nantan asked. Ayana smiled faintly. When I look at him, I see a man who knew love and lost everything. I see someone who fell into darkness deeper than most could survive, and still found a way to keep going. She looked up, her voice steady. There's death in his eyes, Father. But there's life, too. There's hope, a chance to begin again. Nantan studied her, pride and sorrow mixing in his gaze. Your mother was the same, he said quietly. She saw things others couldn't. He gave a small, distant smile. She chose me, when 10 stronger men stood waiting. Ayana met his eyes. Did you ever regret it? Nantan shook his head. It was the greatest gift I was ever given. Father and daughter embraced beneath the open sky, the fire crackling softly beside them. For a moment, there was peace, but it wouldn't last. A young scout came sprinting into the village, chest heaving, eyes wide with alarm. Chief, riders coming from the east, he shouted. A lot of them. 20, maybe more, armed. Nantan rose to his feet in an instant. Who are they? I don't know, but they're asking for a man with blue eyes. A chill swept through the Dustfall folk. Every gaze turned toward Cole Maddox, who had stepped out from his shelter at the sound of the commotion. His face had gone pale, like moonlight over cold stone. It's them, he whispered. The men who destroyed my life. They followed me here. Ayana rushed to him, gripping his hand tight. I won't let them take you. Cole looked at her, love and pain tangled deep in his eyes. If I stay, I bring danger to your people. If I leave, maybe I can draw them away. Before he could move, Nantan's voice cut through the night like thunder. No one under my protection will be handed over to enemies. This is our land, and here, we decide who stays. The drums began to echo through the darkness. The Red Sky Riders took up their bows. Along the horizon, the invaders' torches flickered, like the eyes of demons creeping through the night. The storm had arrived. The air turned cold, sharp as a lone wolf's breath. The torches drew closer, their flames twisting like restless spirits come to claim what wasn't theirs. Cole stood at the center of it all, torn between 2 paths. He could run, vanish into the mountains, pull the danger away from the people who had saved him. Or he could stay and face the ghosts that had hunted him across the land. Ayanna stepped in front of him, placing both hands on his face. "Look at me," she said firmly. "Look at me and hear this." He met her eyes, and in them he saw something he hadn't felt in a long time. Faith. Love. A future. "You're not alone," she said. "Not anymore. Whatever comes tonight, we face it together." Before he could answer, another voice broke through. "She's right." Takai stepped forward. The great warrior moved with purpose, bow in hand, arrows resting across his back. The anger that once burned in him was gone. In its place, something steadier, something closer to respect. "I was blind," Takai said, looking at Cole. "I called you a coward because you refused to fight me. But I see it now. It takes more strength to walk away from a useless fight than to start one." Cole said nothing. "This is my village," Takai continued. "My people. And if those men come to threaten what's ours, I'll fight them with everything I've got." He paused. "Not for you, outsider. For us." Nantan stepped forward then, his presence solid as an ancient mountain. "Tonight," he declared, his voice rolling across the land, "there are no outsiders, no tribes divided. Tonight, we are one family defending our home." The Red Sky Riders formed ranks. 20, 30, 40 warriors, bows and spears ready, faces painted for war. Women hurried the little ones into the far lodges. The stone elders prepared torches, stacking barriers at the village edge. Someone placed a bow into Cole's hands. They trembled, but not from fear, from something he thought he had lost forever. Purpose. The black spurs arrived when the moon stood high in the sky. 25 riders, armed and dangerous. At their front rode Brock Hale, a massive man with a scar carved across his face like a warning. He reined in his horse and shouted across the village, "We only want the farmer. Hand him over and we leave in peace." Nantan stepped forward, unshaken. "In this land, we don't give up our own." Brock Hale let out a harsh laugh. "Your own? That man ain't your blood? He's nothing. A stray, a nobody." "Blood doesn't make family," Nantan replied. "Actions do. And that man has shown more honor in silence than you have in all your words." The tension tightened until even the wind seemed to hold still. And then, everything broke loose. The black spurs charged. But they hadn't expected the fury waiting for them. Arrows streaked through the darkness like falling stars. War cries tore through the night. Horses reared and panicked as flames from the torches surged toward them. Cole fought, not for revenge, not for hatred. He fought for Ayanna, the woman who had stitched his broken soul back together. He fought for the Dustfall folk who had given him a second chance. He fought for the man he wanted to become. In the chaos, Takai appeared at his side, guarding his back like a brother born of the same blood. "Not bad for a farmer," Takai shouted, a fierce grin cutting across his face. The battle was brutal, but short. Outnumbered and outmatched, the black spurs finally broke and fled into the darkness they came from. Brock Hale was the last to retreat, casting one final look filled with raw hatred before disappearing into the trees. When the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the sky in gold and fire, the village still stood. There were wounded, but none lost. Nantan walked toward Cole, who sat by a dying fire, exhausted but alive. Ayanna was beside him, her hand still tightly woven with his. "Cole Maddox," Nantan said, his voice steady and filled with quiet authority. "You came to us as a wounded stranger, a man barely holding on to life. But tonight, you stood and fought as one of us." He reached up slowly and removed the necklace from around his own neck. A worn piece, marked by time, holding a blue stone that had belonged to his father, and his father before him. "My daughter turned away 100 dust riders," he continued. Strong men, worthy men, yet none could make her heart speak. His gaze settled on Cole. You did, without even trying. Nantan stepped forward and placed the necklace around Cole's neck. From this day on, I accept you as my son. Not by duty. He paused, his voice firm, but by choice. Ayana felt tears slip down her cheeks as she moved into her father's arms, holding him tight. Cole stood still for a moment, the weight of it all pressing into his chest. Words caught in his throat, heavy and hard to release. I lost everything I ever loved, he said at last, his voice low. I thought I'd never feel anything again. He looked around at the people standing beside him, at Ayana. But you gave me something I thought was gone forever. He swallowed. A reason to live. The sun rose fully over the mountains, spilling golden light across the village. Ayana and Cole looked at each other. And in that moment, they both understood. This was only the beginning. Two worlds that should have never crossed paths had become one. And the heart that had stayed silent for 23 years was finally singing.